Hello, listeners, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Reward Navigator Podcast. Joining us today again, PJ and Bruce, to enlighten us about achieving true pay transparency and equity. Also inspired by, of course, the Transparency Act that was issued by the EU and where we have to comply by 2026 with a number of regulations. I think this is a true nice closure podcast for the series. We always start with some insights, and here are some for you guys. Only 37% of employees are satisfied with the transparency of the reward policy in their organization. We know from research. Only 40% of employees believe their salary package is fair compared to others within the organization. We talked a lot about fairness already. Maybe we should talk about where does this come from, and mainly starting with the employees believe their salary package is fair. How is transparency going to help us in any way? Because we are already quite transparent at SD Worx, I think.
Wow. Well, first of all, the numbers that you share are of the whole study. Huh?
Yes.
Because these are not the numbers of SD Worx.
Nope.
I know they're different. Transparency is the enabling factor for fairness and careness. Mm-hmm. You only can have the feeling of fairness if there is transparency and if you can obviously compare in an factual, objective way. So in that sense, enough level of transparency, it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. It also is a good thing to make sure that there is much more pay equity between men, women, different nationalities, ethnicities. For that, it's always a good thing. The question is always, how far do you go in that transparency before it becomes too much looking at the €1 and it has a more destructive effect than a constructive effect?
For me, a reward strategy is one thing. What comes after is as important as a strategy is. And what comes after for me are two things. First of all, transparency, making sure that people know what they get, they can get, if their evolution can be in the company. And secondly is communication about that. By combining transparency and communication, you make sure that employees, that they believe in your story. And also reward, although it's a very subjective matter that we try to objectify as much as possible, people need to believe in it. And if they believe in it, they also stand behind it. So it's really about communication and transparency. For transparency, because I know the directive was like signed in 2023, preparing for 2026. Behind the scenes at SD Worx, we're also making sure that everything is correct according to the national legislation that are coming up. But at SD Worx, we are already very transparent in what we offer to candidates, but also what we offer and what the path can be once that you're in the company.
Okay. So you're saying as it works, we're ahead of what the directive is requiring in 2026?
As an HR company, I think it's our purpose and our goal, and what we need to do is to be ahead of HR topics. And we are really transparent at the moment at SD Worx about reward, and something that we would like to keep. Where the directive wouldn't have been signed, it's now signed, but that didn't change the game actually for us.
Okay. A directive, Bruce, is about complying. Is that enough for us? Do we want to comply, or do we want to do more actually? Do we say we want to be ahead of the curve, like PJ said?
Our vision and mission as in our own HR people team is to try to always be ahead of the curve and to be a pioneer as an HR company to the HR world, to also inspire and motivate. So we always want to be not one, but 2 steps ahead of the curve. And that's why we are having conversations in, are we transparent enough? People are in certain bandage. People can know that, they can see that. Is that enough? Is that not enough? We have 70% women. Is it equally paid? Yes or no? We are doing plenty of analysis all the time with PG and the team. Where can we still do things? And every yearly cycle and even between the cycles, we see who is actually a little bit below the bandage. Who do we need to uplift? We actually do that. And who is actually outside too high of the bandage, and where do we then also need to maybe freeze for a period because you need fairness. So we are continuously looking at that at a very, I would say, personal, individual level.
Okay, you were talking about bands and banding, which is a very important thing in reward. Maybe you can elaborate a bit on that, PJ?
Yeah, that's actually the way that we objectify the roles and positions that we have at SD Worx. So every role has been objectified and weighted so that it plots and it fits in a framework. And with every part of the framework, we have clear and objective information about what that person should earn from compensation part of view, but also what that person should earn from benefits, for example. So by really opening that up to our employees, making sure that they can see in which band that they fall, and that really makes it very transparent for them what they can do in their career or where that they can grow to, whether it's in their own family and families, for example, the family HR, the family finance, or whether it's outside their family that they are currently in.
So, and banding meaning that people can compare, they know where they are, comparing to the midpoint of a salary for that particular function. They know that they're in between 80 and 100%, or they're above, like they're on 120%.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what I really wanted to add on that is that it's comparing yourself to the general framework. And that's also what the directive is about, because people often mislead transparency about that I, for example, would like or would need to know what Jan, you earned. And that's not what this transparency, no directive is about. It's about yourself. Where are you in the company reward framework? And that's really crucial information. That's something that we openly give to our employees.
Okay. Very, very, very interesting. I think basically, like Bruce said, transparency is an enabler for fairness and for care, something that we can actually do more on. This also goes back to the first podcast. We talked about financial health. We can talk about that in a fair and care and transparent way as well. We can talk about personalization. I think it's also very important there. If you look back on benefits, the choice that we have, that also should be very transparent. What is it that you get for your money and what I can choose as compared to the general population or people of my main band. Okay, thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to add to this point of transparency?
Maybe one thing, communication is also a very simple way at the end of the month, at the end of the year, if I look to what I have, total cash, that it is understandable and it is easy to understand. Yeah. And it is not an easy one. We try to do a hell of a job at SD Worx. Obviously, it's also our business to do that and to offer that to companies. But how can you continuously simplify it also so that it is simple? Okay, I earn cash so much. And so we try to simplify that also, just simple visualization. It's also in those small things that you help transparency to the people, because when you receive a very complex, detailed pay at the end of the month, you don't understand it and you think, oh, this is not transparent. So sometimes you need to really decide how do you visualize it in a simple way so you make it understandable for people. And then the perception is, oh, now it's transparent. I really get it. That's an area where we can still continue to evolve.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. I remember two things. First of all, transparency is an enabler towards reward and to fairness and careness. And secondly, the point that you made, Bruce, simplicity may be the enabler for transparency in the end, making sure that everybody understands and can be happy with what they have. Thank you so much, gentlemen, and up to the next podcast.
Thank you too.